A good 10 minutes on a Tuesday, and I'm focusing right in on that tremendous regular season game, the Spurs win in Detroit against the Pistons. It was awesome. It was physical. It's going to be one of my favorite regular season games of the entire year. The outcome with the Spurs winning this, the statement, it felt like these things were really important. I know that can sound like simple, like, of course, obviously both teams want to win, but I think knowing that, hey, we could be seeing each other. Considering how great the Pistons have been this year, the surge from the Spurs, some of the health questions around OKC, which, we're kind of in the midst of maybe being a little dismissive of them, and they're still winning a lot of games. But there felt like it was something going on with two young teams. They're like, we want, like, this is going to matter. Like, who makes a statement tonight is going to matter to both sides. So looking at some of the stuff that they were doing with Wemby, incredibly physical. I mean, Duran's the kind of guy you'd want. Strong, undersized, a dog. It looked like a blocking sled at times with Wemby, the way they were treating him. They were doubling him on the catch, which is something where if Wemby has a little bit more time, you don't really want to let him do that, catch and kind of figure out what he wants to do. So there was some doubling there, and he wasn't really scoring a ton. He had 7 points at the half and hadn't had it like his first field goal make in quite some time when he hit a 3 in the third quarter. But we'll get to the rest of the Wemby game because it was incredible. Because, really there's this thing with Wembanyama where, we've talked about Steph Curry's gravity for years and how him just cutting and flying around the perimeter and then cutting baseline or people setting screens and then he pops out and then the other guy's free. We've seen it a million times with Golden State in this offense. Wemby has a very similar thing in a different way where you're not necessarily like freaking out when he has the ball wide open from 35 feet away. But the way Wemby comes off of these rolls and whatever the help assignment rules are for the other team, he's just dragging all of these people in. Like it's almost like quicksand. Like he doesn't even have to have the ball. And that's just such an important part of the Spurs and their evolution with Wembanyama. It's that it's not necessarily like post touches. It's not, trying to figure out a way to get him going on a ball handling pick and roll to see if he's going to beat the defender on a switch. It's even if he doesn't have the ball, just make sure that he's actively like getting into the paint and cutting and rolling hard off of these screens. And he has signed up for all this stuff. I mean, he is such a bought in player. It's unbelievable. And you can just see all these things that are happening around him because if you look at Vassell, who lit it up, you just go through the 3-point makes. I was watching him again this morning. The first one, Cade's just late. Cade's like, we just tipped the ball. I wasn't ready to close out on you like this. Cade's late again, kind of looking at the other side, close out to the right corner. He's late. So there's some stuff on Cade there. There's a kind of a transition delay. So it's not just a full-blown fast break, but they're getting the ball up the court. And Harris decides to leave Vassell in the corner to help on a Fox drive, which I think was the right thing for him to do. But now you're just swinging to the opposite corner, and Vassell's got 3 before the game feels like it's even started. There's another one, and this is full-blown transition, outlet pass to him. Cade's deep. Vassell, it's just, going, hey, man, you got to know the personnel here. You've got to play to the shooter here. It's not about getting back necessarily. It's just making sure that you're matched up with the shooter the entire time. The fifth make was probably one of my favorite ones from Vassell because it was this Fox pick and roll. Wembanyama rolls hard off of it. Asar Thompson is assigned to Vassell on the left break of the 3-point line. But Asar is going to be like, all right, I've got to show something here with Wemby. So he's sort of trailing the roll. Wemby doesn't even get the ball. Swing it. Vassell, another wide open 3. He was 7-11, 28 points last night. And this is somebody who has dealt with injuries this year. But if you look at just his numbers in 2026, he's playing less than 30 minutes a game. There's some other help stuff that I didn't love from Detroit. Some of the decisions that they'd make. Ron Holland's a fun, exciting, ton of energy. He's got a real edge to him. But there's also times you're just like, I don't know what the hell you're doing. There was a drive by Castle where Holland was the 3rd defender to come in to help on the Castle drive, and he's eating Champagny wide open in the corner. There's another loose ball play with Duncan where he was clearly just going for the loose ball, but that leads to a wide open 3 again. And there was a Dennis Jenkins help on a Wemby roll, which I imagine is kind of, again, back to that Asar play that I was talking about, where the rule is just kind of try to find a way to maybe get in the way a little bit, but it may be something where you go, even if Dennis Jenkins is in the way, he's not in the way against Wembanyama if there's a catch there. So maybe you need to stay a little closer on the shooter, and then he ended up giving the 3 up. So some of it's just being late, bad closeouts, and some of it's just being helpless against Wembanyama's presence and rotating help. And then next thing you know, you're leaving shooters open, and these guys lit it up last night from 3. Cade went 5 of 26, so not great timing to do our MVP conversation about him, but that's okay. Had a bad game. His greatest strength, my favorite thing with him is that his size and his handle and his downhill stuff, and Detroit does a really good job of not making it the same thing over and over again. Just, hey, he's going to bring the ball up, and you're going to have Duren set a pick and roll, and then we're going to figure it all out. But the way they get into that look where Cade has a decision if there's help to him, because he's usually always going to have the size advantage against the defender getting downhill. If the help comes to him, then Duren's there for the lob, or you swing it to the other corner if somebody goes to Duren. Or if there isn't help and they're playing Duren on the lob, you've got Cade just being able to finish at the rim. And, it's not like they're off the charts restricted area numbers as far as like attempts and then field goal percentage, because there's a lot of attempts there, but it's in that restricted area. It's something that's generally been on the uptick for Cade now over 5 years of his career, which was kind of a weird number early on. You're like, why is he not better with this? And guess what? Against Wembanyama, when he's in the game, that's just not going to be the option that it is against basically everybody else in the league. And that thing that we ask centers to do in this game, where we want you to show on the ball handler once his initial defender in that 1-5 pick and roll where they bring the center up, and it's like we want our ball handler going up against the center because we like that matchup. I mean, it's one of the primary things you see teams run all the time. And, a lot of times I feel bad for these centers because it's like, hey, we want you to show, we want you to contain, but we also want you to be able to go back to your big guy as he's rolling behind you. And with Wembanyama, he can get out and contest, and then he can still get back. I mean, it's just stupid. It's stupid what he can do defensively in a game. Wembanyama could have had 0 points in last night's game, and the stuff that he was doing on defense was that impressive. Like, he was still, I think, the most valuable player playing on this. And on top of everything else, again, with Cade in that specific matchup, depending on how the play would play out, he had, I think, 7 misses in the paint. 26 shot attempts, only 5 free throws. That's not necessarily what you're looking for. Castle was ready for it, picking him up full court, letting him have it. Cade chucked him at some point, I think, showing some frustration. When Fox got in, it was like, thank God De'Aaron Fox is on me. And you can see Cade just using that strength and going right at him. But then they would run Harper at him. And Carter Bryant got some minutes against him where I thought he was really competitive too. So, and they talked about it in the postgame. Like, there's a lot of bodies that they were throwing at Cade, and they all signed up for the seriousness of this thing. Maybe an overstatement, but I think it's 68-64. And from that point on, that's where the game was lost. You had that great Wemby block, a Castle 3. Dennis Jenkins is subbed in at 2:59, and Bickerstaff decided to go, and they were calling it on the broadcast, which again, I think Hummel and Austin Rivers, this awesome NBC product that you have here, they're like, hey, it looks like Bickerstaff wants to go with the hustle lineup. And that was Dennis Jenkins, LeVert, Paul Reed, Ron Holland, and Javonte Green. Well, they were stuck on 72 points for like 3 minutes. And so it was like, cool hustle. We'd also love to see it get some buckets. And I think that's kind of where the game, and it wasn't just that sub pattern, but that group of 5 out there, I'm like, where are the buckets coming from? So I don't want to make a huge deal about the one game result, but it does feel totally fair because this game was important. It does feel really fair to say that Wembanyama wrecks the best thing about Detroit because they're not a great shooting team. The secondary ball handler, the secondary creator is something they've been searching for here for a while. And that's why you had like Dennis Schroeder getting real minutes with them last year, because they just don't want Cade having to take over every single possession, which I think is a really smart thing that they do. I've complimented them throughout the season, just noticing little stuff that they do to get Cade into the offense instead of some other teams that just be like, we're going to have you bring the ball up every single time and then start with pick and roll and then see what happens. But they're in this weird and look, they're great. They're the 1 seed. They're physical. I fucking love them. All right. They take it on every night. Like, we are going to make you feel us all night long. But what happens now is, you're this 1 seed. We're wondering if you can win an NBA title. So we're going to be a little harsher on you about things. Those are the rules. And so at least for a night, like they are stuck in this kind of closing 5 dilemma of, do we want Dennis Jenkins out there because he's a 3-point shooter and is a ball handler next to Cade, knowing that he's a target on defense? Do we want Asar Thompson out there knowing that he can't shoot and everybody's going to sag off of him? Like, that was another thing too, is when you watch the way San Antonio kind of packed their defense back, they were not stretched. They were not stressing themselves at all to feel like they had to stay glued to any of these shooters out there, right? It was disruptive in the Cade, and then a lot of it felt kind of easy. And then now, the next thing you know, you're like, where the hell am I supposed to go with the ball if no one's going to hit any shots all night long? So, Dennis Jenkins, who has been an incredible story, a Johnny, he's 38% from 3 on the season, but in 2 of the last 3 months, 22% and 31% this month. And then he's had 2 months where he's averaging about an assist and a half a game. And, he has to be the most confident guy out on the floor to even get to this point of being in the NBA and doing what he's done for this Pistons team this year, and, getting minutes over other guys with better resumes and higher profile players. But, it's asking a lot for him to be closing like some big playoff games. He's 3rd on the Pistons right now in fourth quarter minutes. And I realize what Bickerstaff is doing, because he's like, if I go with Asar, then it's a shooting thing. But can I go Asar, Jenkins around Cade, Durant, and Harris, which are the 3 that are a lock? Or do you go with Duncan, because that gives us the shooting? But then if I go with Duncan, then I afford to have Dennis? And does Asar mess up our spacing? And does Ron mess up our spacing? And, Javonte Green's going to get a few minutes here and there, but he's not going to be part of the closing lineup. So you can see it. It doesn't show up when they are just better defensively and more physical and everybody's having a hard time with the Cade Durant stuff. But against the elite teams, when you start projecting, like, will this become a problem? Is there a secondary creator that's hitting enough shots from the outside? And I don't think it's LeVert. I don't think it's Ron Holland. Asar's not going to hit threes all of a sudden out of nowhere. But that was kind of the dilemma that they're in. They're also behind too. So they're trying to figure out a way to get some offense into there. So that's just something to think about with them. So the Spurs, 1 game, sure, you could say it that way because it isn't 1 game. This is an impressive run that this team is on. They've won 9 straight. They are 8-1 against the top 3 seeds in the East and Western Conference. Think about that. 8-1 against the other 5 big boys here. They're a NBA best 20-11 against teams 500 or better. And with Wemby, they are now 30-13. And what I loved about last night was Detroit comes out. We're going to be really physical. I know they're down 14-2, but they got back into the game. And the Spurs are like, fine, we're good with this. We'll be just as physical. Like, we're not going to be thrown off by this at all. And that, I think, is like the overall statement of that game, and what was really an impressive win just all around from the Spurs. NBA Mailbag, NBAMailbagRR@gmail.com. We bring in Ceruti, who is ready to go.
Yo.
Wow.
How we doing?
Great.
Got some good mailbag questions here.
Big slate tonight. So last night was a little light.
Yeah. Magic Lakers, excited about that.
Are you?
See if we could. Yeah, I still get excited to watch the team. But, okay. Talk to me, I guess, after tonight's game. All right, couple good mailbag questions here. This is from Caleb. Goes, as a casual NBA observer, the Jordan, Poole, and Austin Reaves breakouts in successive years seemed pretty similar. Solid regular seasons followed by playoff performances that got them big contract extensions. Were there major differences from a basketball perspective that have led them to different career trajectories, or can it be chalked up to just personality differences? I know Poole's career direction is nearly impossible to separate from the Draymond punch, but just wondering if there are hints of breakout seasons and how things would have turned out otherwise.
Yeah, I never thought of this, ever. I think one guy gives a fuck and the other guy doesn't. So, when I watched, there were even some times with Golden State where I'm like, this is going to work. And then he has that incredible run in 22, and then he gets the contract. So I don't know. I mean, when Austin Reaves gets his contract, is he going to be like, all right, I'm good now? But the Jordan Poole basketball of the last few years has been an experience, and that's being nice. I have a really hard time imagining Austin Reaves ever turning into that kind of player. He's like, all right, I'm good.
That is fair. Wasn't the issue too that Golden State gave him Poole the contract like kind of early, right? Too, and they didn't really have to. And
I don't remember that.
Maybe I'm making that up. I feel like they maybe could have waited or something on that. I was kind of a Poole guy. Like I was like, hey, if he's going to be a restricted free agent, Magic needs shooting. Let's do it. Glad that didn't work out. Maybe it's a good thing I'm not the GM sometimes. But yeah, the Poole thing. I mean, it was just so exciting in that final series. Like to think of where he is now, though, is kind of insane, right? Like the downward trajectory that he had. Like this was like, hey, like could he be an all-star? Could he, what could he do with his own team? And now it's just like nobody wants him on the roster. Although he had a nice little renaissance, I guess, in Washington.
Yeah, he shot it pretty well, but you just had to watch it to go like, what's the plan here, man? He's been pretty bad again this year. I mean, some of the advanced stuff is just atrocious, but there's those 2 years with Golden State after, a rookie year where he wasn't really, I mean, he played a lot of minutes, but he's got like 2 years at least statistically where it looked like he was actually heading in the right direction. And he was a first round draft pick. So yeah, maybe they didn't make him stall out in that restricted year and just gave him the money on the 4-year deal because it was huge money.
Mm-hmm.
And then they knew, they were like, we got to get out of this immediately.
Yeah.
It was actually a really good trade.
It was. Yeah. No, I mean, Reaves
just to get off the money.
Reaves just feels like Reaves is one of those guys where feels like it's a little bit misused in the Lakers. Like those three guys, him, LeBron, and Luka, just, obviously it's been a small sample size this year, but it just, something's not right. And
well, they haven't played much together, so that's part of it. I would,
but even so,
imagine
the numbers are not good with all three of them on the court playing together. So, I mean, you're right. Maybe they just work it out and it ends up being fine, but.
No, I wouldn't expect like all of a sudden they're just going to lock everybody up with that group. And then depending on what they want to do with center, because then you've got a fourth guy who you wouldn't exactly say is a presence defensively.
Real quick, speaking of centers, can I say I take a lot of heat? Can I take a little victory lap on the DeAndre Ayton stuff? I've been a pretty anti-Ayton guy for a long time. Thought it was a disaster no matter what, and it has been a disaster. So I'll just chalk one in the win column for your boy. I got to take those every once in a while when you can get them.
He had a play in the Clippers game where he had Jordan Miller sealed in the restricted area. Catches it. There's no help defender, and he kicked it out. Now, he kicked it out to Austin Reaves. Austin Reaves hit a three. But, I had to rewind it. I just went, you've got to be kidding me, man. All you had to do was turn around. But, yeah, he gets the dime, and three's better than two. But that's one of those where it's like, yeah, I know what the result was, and you can hammer me with the result. But the fact that he had that position, so that happens. Yeah. There's a handful of Ayton plays every single night where I'm like, oh my God, what was that?
Yeah, there's a few players in the league where it's like, if your team signs him, it's like, oh man, they are desperate. And he might be the number one draft pick in that.
I still think the signing was totally fine. They desperately needed
it's
size.
Not a lot of money, sure. Yeah,
it didn't cost them. So,
but it's a tough watch. It's a tough watch. All right, this is a good one. This is from William. Thought this would be relevant considering all the recent discourse around tanking, too many teams in the games, yada, yada, yada. Now, I know this would never happen because it's all about the money, bro, but just humor me. What if the NBA moved to 48 games comprising of 24...
No. Stop.
Okay. Well, so I read this beforehand. I don't fully understand. So you're just selectively playing not the entire league. So that I think would be a problem. But let me keep reading. NBA moves to 48 games comprising of 24 2-game series. So you get 12 home, 12 away, where each series counts either as a win, a loss, or a tie. So I think he's saying if you win both games, you get a win. You lose both, obviously loss, and then the second splitting it would be a tie. Schedule becomes weekly like the NFL, 2 tranches of series, Thursday, Saturday, and Friday, Sunday. That's kind of fun. Division winner, auto bid. So actually it means something for you to basically play each person and you play everyone in the division twice. Enables more fantasy engagement, which is obviously just huge for everybody. Yeah, I would say fantasy basketball is kind of tough right now. Not a huge fan because it's just like, setting the lineup is not awesome. If you did, that's what I've always said about the NFL. Like the NFL is really easy to bet and it's really easy to play fantasy. And I think like just, Joe Schmo who like doesn't have to follow the league could like win a fantasy league because it's pretty easy to follow. Whereas like fantasy basketball, fantasy baseball is a whole nother level. They're just way harder. Not saying the league would change for that, but I do think, yes, the fantasy application.
Also being on a Sunday and then it's over the course of the majority of the winter. Week. And, it's the best television product ever. It's to a point where, again, if you're watching this, you're with us on this. No, but it's just, you almost feel left out on Sundays.
Right.
Like as a guy who doesn't watch football.
You go to a function, you're like, hey, you watching game Saturday? And if the guy says no, you're like, what do we talk about?
Yeah. Like, what's wrong? What's wrong with Ted?
Yeah, I've been there. Trust me, it's a little weird. All right, let me keep going because there's a lot more. Less games overall, so players get more rest and you can basically, get more days of rest in between and also potentially the same location. Less games makes each game more impactful, so there isn't much load management. All right, that's fair. 2-game series so that the last game of the series always means something. That's kind of fun. Something even if you lose the first game, you can still get a tie out of the result. The only thing I'm not sure of is the point system like soccer and if that would make sense. He said, I'll punt to Ceruti if he thinks the system is rewarding wins more than just tallying up wins, ties, and losses. I think in soccer, I would just add like there are teams that just play for ties and that's a win for them. I don't think that would be the case necessarily here. I think you try to win both games and whatever the results are, the results are. I got to be honest with you. I'm it's never going to happen. I'm interested. I like event style things. I like the schedule, the Thursday through Sunday. That would be kind of awesome. What I don't understand is so you would play 12 teams then. So how does it? You don't even play the entire conference.
All you had to say was 48 games, and we had to stop doing it. It's not happening. It's not happening. There's no way the owners are going to give up that inventory. There's no way the TV partners want to give up that inventory. If there's one thing that we should talk about and just understand is stop fixing the game by eliminating television inventory because it's not going to fucking happen. And even if you went to the Players Association and say, hey, you guys want to play once a week and have a ton of time off and now you're going to play less than 50 games. It's like, oh, by the way, like, just so you know, the cap's going down. Okay. You're like, are you ready for your max players to be 30 million a year? Like, I don't know if there's something to be said about the scarcity of it because part of the NBA, NFL rating stuff that always pisses me off is it's like, all right, well, maybe the NBA should just play 17 games and have it be on the middle of the day in the weekend. Like, we'll just have the NBA take over the Sundays after football's done, play once a week. Like, do you think the ratings would go up? Do you think the ratings would go up in the NBA playoffs if it's single elimination every single game? Like, of course. Like, sometimes things are just simple math. Now, if you had 17 regular season NBA games, which I know is not what the emailer is talking about here, but this is back to the ratings debate, the NFL would still do better. All right. But like some of these arguments, you just go, yeah, no shit. No shit that the NFL regular season games murder the NBA ones when there's 82 of them. So is there a number that you're comfortable giving up that much revenue or you think you're making it back up with the scarcity of your product, which is, again, why the NFL does so well because of the scarcity part of it. But I just think any of these solutions of shorter season that everybody's on, I think if it went to 70 games, then within 8 years, you'd have people saying, 62 is kind of the right number. I just think that's the way this stuff works. So the owners are probably just always going to stay at 82. The league will probably always want to stay at 82 because they're just going to go like, look, we took out a ton of the back-to-backs. We took out a ton of the 4 and 5 nights. Like if you look at the overall numbers of the games, like the 4 and 5 nights, the back-to-backs and stuff, like they've done an amazing job eliminating a ton of that stuff. And it's just kind of, again, that human nature thing where the new argument will be, yeah, I can't believe we're playing 3 and 6.
I like the idea of this though.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing I don't like is you only play 12 teams. So like Jokic just doesn't come to town one year for you. Like that kind of sucks.
What if you fly to Toronto to miss a wedding?
Yep, there you go. Life advice callback. I think that's a problem.
He was hurt for that game, by the way, too. So he didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, come on, he's a real one. But yeah, he. I like thinking outside the box because I do think like
that's
it
totally
would be cool.
fine. Right.
It would be cool if there was like a, hey, this is when the NBA games are, and this is when I know, and like, I just think
I'd love it. Look, I'd love it. I mean, you're telling me I only have to watch once a week?
Hey, your Monday
That'd
through
be
Wednesdays
awesome.
are just the best. Yeah, let's listen.
Yeah.
There you go.
10 good minutes on Portuguese cuisine.
Can I ask you this, though? Like, I agree with you. Like, obviously, the money thing is what it is. But, like, at some point, is the league ever going to be like, this is actually just going to be more healthy for us? Like, we understand we're going to have to take a haircut, but in the long, we're playing the long game to think that, like, this is going to be better overall for the health of the league if we do scale back some of the games and change the format a little bit. Because that, like, obviously the players don't want to agree. Nobody wants to lose money. And maybe it's impossible to convince the players now to do that for a generation that's going to reap the benefits in the future. I get that. It's kind of like collective bargaining, right? When it's like, hey, yeah, like, you know, we're not going to pay the rookies more because the vets want to make more money, you know, now. But like, is there ever going to be a time when they have to make that decision where they're like, hey, we should do something for the better of the future, the 20 years down the line than just like the next 2 years?
Well, the way you do that is you tell all the active players, like, don't worry, we'll implement this in 5 years. And the players say yes to it, knowing that there was some baseball taxing stuff that they did, that they staggered it, where I feel like it was a little, I'd have to go back and read it, but I remember like 25 years ago going, oh, they kind of staggered this tax system on team salaries where it felt like, you know, your current active players, the majority of them would never feel it. You know, even on the tanking thing that I talked about on Monday's episode too, you know, I mean, the problem is anybody that ever does anything on any of these topics, it's like, well, here's what you did wrong and all this different stuff. There's no way the Players Association would just allow you to max a rookie. Like, even if you said it's the max rookie extension as opposed to the locked in rookie salaries, the Players Association is not going to be looking out for members that are not members at that time too, on top of everything else. But look, I love the outside the box stuff because you never know. Like, there's, again, this team proposal that I was sent where basically the season's just as long, but then you dump out the tanking teams and make them play each other for like the last 20 games of the season.
Listen, this was always my thing.
And then that becomes based on standings, and the best team from that then gets the number one pick, and then you work your way back. So you're actually still playing competitive basketball the rest of the way. And I think it was still a full schedule. And I remember I looked at the PDF and I was kind of like, all right, you know, how weird is this one going to be? And then after I read it like twice, I go, this is actually, I don't know if the team will let me share what it is. I imagine they sent it into the NBA, but I felt like it was the best proposal that made the most sense, that still protected the interest of everything that you'd want. And it basically would eliminate, I mean, the only tanking that you'd have would be a team that would say, do we even want to get in the playoffs here if we're on that like 18, 19, 20 line? Well, it's a hell of a lot better than what you're going to see this last March and April.
Yeah. The question with that, though, what do you do with a team like the Pelicans who aren't playing for their own pick, right? But I guess this is
but what are they going to do? Hook up Atlanta?
Yeah, that's true. So you just try to screw them over as
well,
much
they
as
already
possible.
did. So maybe.
Yeah. I had always advocated, I was like, I wanted to do a lottery, just playoff, like single elimination playoff. But I understand the problems with that of like, why would a veteran care about what the draft pick is? But if you do it, yeah, you're right. If you do it as part of the actual season and not just like an additional postseason, yeah, I think that makes more sense. All right, last one here. Ryan, this is from Tyler. Which season is better, Pippen in 93-94 or Jaylen Brown this season?
Ooh, wheelhouse for me. After the Last Dance, I got to be honest with you, like the younger viewers here, the way they talked about Pippen, and it was an incredible documentary. I mean, it was awesome, right? So what I'm doing right now is looking at a tanking idea I like and going, yeah, but what about this? What about the 17th odds? I don't remember Pippen being talked about that way. When they were suggesting like he was also in the conversation of like best player in the world, that's not how we talked about him back then. Now, maybe it's unfair that if he had his own team for 10 years and didn't have the best player of all time right next to him, then he would have had a chance to shine. And in 93-94, he was third in MVP. He was fourth, I think, defensive player of the year. He was first team All-NBA, first team All-Defense. The raw numbers, 22-9-6. The advanced stuff is pretty good. But they did, after getting the 3 seed, losing the second round in that Knicks series. And that was the infamous Game 3 where he wouldn't come in and Kukoc hit the game winner, which was just like, I wasn't a huge Pippen guy back then. And maybe I respect him more now. I think I respect him. Well, I mean, he's always good for like a couple every now and then. And it's pretty clear, like, he got hosed on the contract thing, which is kind of his fault, but then I can also understand it. I've done stuff in the past where I've been like, I can't believe like this is the way this was done. And then you're pissed, but then sometimes it's even worse in life when you can only be pissed at yourself. So I understood him being pissed about that. The Jordan stuff where he's had many times where he's kind of like, it wasn't just one guy. It wasn't just one guy. And you're like, yeah, but it was kind of like a really special guy, man. So he gets the team to himself that year. And that Kukoc thing with him not coming back to the game. And then, of course, the shot goes in, too, on top of everything else. For those of us that didn't love Pippen, like I wasn't some guy just watching Jordan going, oh, my God, he's my favorite. Like, I love him so much. I didn't. I was a Barkley guy, and Jordan was in his way. And so I don't know. I wasn't even like a Jordan fan. I mean, it was an unbelievable NBC Saturdays and just throw it on and watch. But I wasn't like appreciative of it because I was a kid. And then I was in college and, I was in awe of the guy, but like I didn't appreciate it as much as I kind of appreciate it retroactively with all that. So as far as the Jaylen season to this season to the Pippen season, it's a pretty fascinating like conversation just because of Tatum being out. And I do wonder like deep down if Jaylen Brown like hooked up to a lie detector test kind of loves to be able to do this year with Tatum being out with the injury. I don't know. I don't even know that that's necessarily wrong. I'm sure Pippen probably felt the same way. Like, hey,
do you think Tatum coming back is like, I can't let like what if Jaylen actually does make first team All NBA? They're in the finals. Like, I can't let this happen.
I'll leave that one to local Boston radio of like deep down, does Jaylen Brown want Tatum back? They're probably already doing it. Because I thought that post that he had about the offensive efficiency being even better this year than it was last year, I was like, man, like,
all right, but can we get into the stats then? Because I've asked you about this for like a week now, and I still don't know that we have an answer. And this isn't even a new thing, but like the Jaylen Brown on-off Celtic stuff is weird. And I'm not sitting here telling you like I think Jaylen Brown is a fraud or that he's not actually good. I don't believe that. I think he is very good, and I like him as a player. But there's like 4 straight years of evidence that they are better with him off the floor than on the floor. And it's this year. It's bad. Like it's almost like I think it's almost 10 points.
Well, he's not an analytics guy. He's never been. The guys that are hardcore analytics when he's brought up like as an all-star or all NBA when he's had those kinds of seasons, they're like beside themselves, being like you can't possibly. Now the weird thing is like the BPM stuff looks pretty good for him this year. And when I was looking at the advanced box score stuff, it actually looks pretty good. Then you go to cleaning the glass, and it's like a disaster. So I do think some of the
stuff. He's not near like. He's not close to like Jokic, SGA, Cade. No. Like he's still well below. I think he's like, where is he? He's like in the 30s, I think.
So the if you want to go like advanced this year against Pippen, year 93-94, it's advantage Pippen. Do you know who's taking the most shots per game right now in the NBA? It's Jaylen Brown.
Oh, okay.
No, it's Jaylen Brown. I thought that was going to be a bit more of a layup.
Sorry. Yeah.
He's been incredible. So I the advanced stuff to really tear him apart. He's not in the class of those other guys. Okay. He isn't. I wouldn't vote for him for MVP. I think that's a little absurd, but at the same time, I also don't want to be like, oh, actually, he's just putting up a million shots. And it's also a different game from like Pippen. If you look at the offensive ranks, the offensive efficiency of NBA seasons, right now we're in the midst of, again, the best offensive efficiency league-wide that the game has ever seen. If you go back to the 93-94 season, it's 32nd. It's actually better than I thought it would be. The pace is slower, less shots per game. Pippen's not taking 23 shots a game. I think he was like 17 shots a game back then. So I think some of the raw traditional numbers look better for Jaylen. But I would say on top of the defense and knowing that the sport is just different from 30 years ago. I think Pippen had the better season.
Just back to the Jaylen thing too, about the on-off thing. It is weird because I've seen people be like, oh, well, the Celtics bench is awesome, yada, yada, yada. It's like, okay, then maybe that's fair. But SGA's on-off is awesome. So, and their bench is pretty great. So I don't, it's a very strange thing. And someone who's smarter than me explain it to me. I don't know.
The on-off thing can be, I mean, if you want to find a flaw in all of this stuff, like depending on who gets stuck with certain rotations, it can look bad. I mean, one of the things about Jokic is that bench was so terrible for so many years that his on-off would just be absurd. Now, he also was the best player in the world, so it wasn't like, but if you're just completely married to the on-off thing, you know, in the Jokic case, it becomes even more extreme because for all of those years, it was like, all right, well, Denver's going to lose these 3 minutes. You know, every single start of the fourth quarter for Denver prior to having like a nice bench this year, even though they've had all these injuries. But there was multiple years there with the Nuggets where you would watch the Nuggets fourth quarter. I would be like, all right, here is the score. It's 91-80 entering the fourth quarter. And then 3 minutes would go by and Jokic would have to get to the scorer's table earlier than probably Mike Malone wanted to put him in. And you're like, they cut it to 4. And it was just always those 2 little bumpers there where he was out, where if they were up 10, they'd be up 3 when he came. It felt like every single time.
I mean, hold on to your butts time. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cleaning the Glass has Jaylen Brown as a -18 over games in like win expectation over an 82 game season. That's insane. That's just wrong. Like, no
-18
That's
wins.
insane.
So when I saw that, I went, how? I actually sent that to somebody smarter than me today, but I didn't hear back from him yet to be like, can you help me understand this one?
TBD. Yeah,
TBD. More to do on that. But for the sake of this exercise, to the email, I would go with Pippen's season being better than Jaylen's season. Although, you know, the playoff part of it could change all that. But if you're just going like the 82 games against 82 games regular season, Pippen was more impressive.
Fair.
All right, that'll do it. Good 36 minutes today. Good 37 minutes. Thanks to Ceruti. Thanks to Tom. Thanks to Kevin. Thanks to Kyle, who it's always weird when he's on this. I think the first 2 or 3 he did, I was like, you're on this? But thanks for doing that, Kyle. And we'll get that t-shirt brainstorming edition going. I want an army of ideas. Lifeboats. All right, folks.